I never believed places could remember people. I believed memories belonged to us, that they lived inside the soft matter of our brains and faded when we did. I believed walls were empty things. Floors were dead. Doors were only doors. I was wrong. I moved into the house because it was quiet. That was the reason I gave everyone. Quiet street, quiet neighbors, quiet life. What I didn't say was that quiet felt safer than noise. Noise carried expectations. Noise demanded reactions. Quiet let me disappear. The house stood at the end of a narrow road that bent just enough to hide it until you were almost upon it. A two-story structure, paint the color of old bone, windows tall and narrow like watchful eyes. It had been empty for years, according to the agent. No deaths worth mentioning. No dramatic stories. Just time and dust. The first night I slept there, I woke up at 3:17 a.m. for no reason I could explain. My phone screen glowed softly in the darkness, the time crisp and undeniable. I lay still listening. The house was breathing. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a slow, patient sound, as if the walls were expanding and contracting, learning the shape of me. I told myself it was pipes. Old houses made noises. That was normal. Still, I didn't sleep again that night. The next morning I noticed the smell. Not rot. Not mold. Something faintly metallic, like rain hitting old coins. It seemed strongest in the hallway outside the spare room. I opened the door, expecting dust. The room was clean. Too clean. No footprints. No debris. The window was closed, yet the air inside felt disturbed, like someone had just stood up and left. I stepped in, my skin prickling, and that was when I heard it. A whisper. No footprints. No debris. The window was closed, yet the air inside felt disturbed, like someone had just stood up and left. I stepped in, my skin prickling, and that was when I heard it. A whisper. So soft I almost missed it. It wasn't a word. It was the sound someone makes when they are about to speak and change their mind. I backed out and closed the door. For the next week, the house behaved. No whispers. No breathing. I began to think stress had played tricks on me. I unpacked boxes, arranged furniture, let myself believe in normal things again. Then objects started moving. Nothing dramatic. A chair angled slightly differently than I remembered. A book placed upside down on the coffee table. Keys not where I left them. Each time, I blamed myself. Memory is unreliable. I knew that. But one evening, I came home to find my bedroom mirror turned to face the wall. I was alone. I stood there for a long time, heart pounding, hand resting against the glass as if it might be warm. It wasn't. It was cold. Cold in a way that felt intentional. That night, I dreamed of hallways that stretched forever, doors lining both sides. Behind every door, someone was standing perfectly still, facing the wall. I walked past them, unable to stop, knowing that if any of them turned around, I would not survive seeing their faces. I woke up screaming. The house answered. A low sound rose from beneath the floorboards, like a satisfied sigh. I stopped inviting people over after that. It wasn't that I was afraid something would happen to them. It was worse. I was afraid nothing would. Afraid the house would behave, would make me look foolish, would isolate me further. Isolation is how it works. I know that now. The first voice learned my name on a Tuesday. I was in the kitchen, washing dishes, when I heard it clearly for the first time. Don't. I dropped the plate. It shattered, shards skittering across the floor. The voice had come from behind me, close enough that I felt breath against my neck. I spun around. Nothing. My reflection in the darkened window looked wrong. Not distorted. Delayed. When I raised my hand, it moved a second too late. I stepped back, and the reflection smiled. I covered the window and sat on the floor until sunrise. After that, the voices multiplied. Always whispering. Always just beyond understanding. They never told me. After that, the voices multiplied. Always whispering. Always just beyond understanding. They never told me to do anything specific. They commented.
Observed.
He's noticing now. She lasted longer. Don't look at the door. Of course, I looked at the door. The spare room door was open. Inside, the walls were no longer empty. Names were carved into them.
Hundreds of them.
Some shallow, some deep, all overlapping. Dates followed, many of them, spanning decades. The most recent date was from 2 years ago. And beneath it was space. Waiting. I didn't call the police. I didn't call anyone. I packed a bag and tried to leave. The front door wouldn't open. Not locked. Not stuck. It simply refused. The handle turned freely, but the door did not move, as if it had forgotten what doors were supposed to do. Behind me, the house breathed in. You can't leave, the voices said, no longer whispering. I ran upstairs, heart hammering, every instinct screaming. The hallway was longer than it had been before. The walls stretched, the floor warped, each step taking more effort than the last. Doors appeared where there had been none. They were all open. Inside each room stood a person, facing the wall. Some were old. Some were young. Some wore clothes from decades past. All of them were motionless. I understood then. The house didn't kill people. It kept them. I backed away, stumbling into my bedroom. The mirror had been turned back around. My reflection waited for me, smiling patiently. You fit, it said in my voice. I shattered the mirror with my elbow. Pain exploded at my arm, warm and sharp. The reflection screamed as. The glass broke, not in fear but in anger. The house shook. I ran. Down the stairs, through rooms that twisted and folded in on themselves. Windows showed places that were not outside. Long tunnels, dark water, endless night skies filled with unmoving stars. The front door stood open. I didn't hesitate. The moment I crossed the threshold, the world snapped back into place. The street was there. The sky was blue. The house stood silent and ordinary behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't stop running until my lungs burned and my legs failed me. I never returned. Months passed. I moved cities. Changed my number. Slept with the lights on. For a while it worked. The whispers faded. The dreams stopped. I began to believe I had escaped. Then I started waking up at 3:17 a.m. again. The breathing returned.
Not around me.
Inside me. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I catch my reflection moving just a little too late. Sometimes, I find names scratched into my notebooks in handwriting that looks like mine but isn't. Last night, I woke up standing in my hallway, facing the wall. I don't remember walking there. I don't remember turning off the lights. I only remember the feeling of the house settling around me, patient and pleased, no matter where I am. Because the truth is, I never really left. Once a place remembers you, it doesn't forget. And neither do you. I tried to convince myself that what followed was stress.
Trauma.
A mind refusing to let go of a bad experience. That explanation worked during the day, when light-filled rooms and sounds behaved the way they were supposed to. It failed completely at night. The breathing inside me didn't sound like lungs. It was deeper, slower, as if something vast had curled up behind my ribs and was learning my rhythm. When I held my breath, it waited. When I exhaled, it followed. I stopped sleeping in my bedroom. Then I stopped sleeping at all. At 3:17 a.m. every night, my eyes snapped open. Sometimes I was in bed. Sometimes I was sitting upright on the couch. Once I woke up standing barefoot on the cold tiles of my bathroom, forehead pressed against the mirror, fog blooming on the glass with each breath. Words were written there, not carved, not scratched, written in steam, appearing from the inside of the mirror outward. Stay still. My reflection did not blink. I smashed the mirror with my fist and felt relief when it shattered. Relief didn't last. The pieces continued. I smashed the mirror with my fist and felt relief when it shattered. Relief didn't last. The pieces continued reflecting me, dozens of fractured versions, all smiling at slightly different times. I covered every reflective surface in the apartment after that. Mirrors, windows, even the dark screen of my television. It didn't stop the feeling of being watched. It only made it harder to know from where. The first time I heard footsteps, I was certain someone had broken in. They were slow, deliberate, pacing the length of my hallway. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and crept toward the sound, heart hammering so loudly I was sure whoever it was could hear it. The hallway was empty. The footsteps continued anyway. They moved when I moved.
Stopped when I stopped.
When I lifted my foot, the sound echoed half a second later, heavier than it should have been, like something else was copying me with poor timing. I ran back into the kitchen and locked the door behind me. The footsteps stopped outside. Then something pressed against the door from the other side. Not a hand, a shape, flat and wide, sliding slowly downward, leaving a faint dark smear through the wood. A voice whispered from the grain itself. Almost home. I screamed until my throat tore raw. That was when the dreams returned, stronger than before. They were no longer abstract hallways or faceless figures. They were memories, twisted just enough to hurt. My childhood bedroom, but the walls were too close. My mother's voice calling my name from another room, repeating it over and over without pause, without breath. Friends who stood with their backs to me, shoulders trembling, refusing to turn around. Every dream ended the same way. Me, facing a wall. In the dreams, I understood something I couldn't explain when awake. The wall wasn't there to trap me. It was there to protect me. Whatever stood behind me was worse. I began finding dirt under my fingernails in the mornings. Splinters. Flakes of old paint. Once, a tiny curl of wallpaper. I started recording myself at night, setting up my phone to capture the living room while I tried to sleep on the couch. The first few recordings showed nothing. Hours of stillness. Then, on the fourth night, I watched myself sit up at exactly 3:17 a.m. I didn't open my eyes. I stood, slow and stiff, movements wrong, like a puppet pulled by unfamiliar strings. I walked out of frame. The recording continued for hours, showing an empty room filled only with the sound of breathing. Not mine. When I checked the timestamp, I saw that I didn't return to the couch until just before sunrise. I had no memory of where I'd been. I deleted the recording, but it didn't matter. The house, no, not the house, something else, had learned it didn't need walls anymore. It began using memories instead. I would blink and find myself standing in places I recognized but hadn't visited in years. My old school hallway, lights flickering. A hospital waiting room that smelled of antiseptic and fear. The narrow road where the house used to stand, though when I looked up, the house wasn't there. The space it occupied was worse. An outline pressed into the air, like the absence of something massive. The sky bent around it. Sound died near it. And I could feel it noticing me. "You came back," it said, not in words but in pressure and gravity. I ran every time, but running stopped helping. Distance meant nothing. The thing didn't chase. It waited. People around me started acting strange. Friends would pause mid-conversation, eyes unfocusing, heads tilting slightly, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. Once, a coworker turned to face the wall during a meeting and stood there until security escorted him out, trembling and sobbing, insisting he'd been told to stay still. I knew then it wasn't just me. The names I'd seen carved into the spare room wall weren't victims. They were anchors. Each person remembered by the place made it stronger. Made it easier for it to exist anywhere reflection, memory, and silence overlapped. I tried to warn someone. Anyone. I went to a doctor, then a therapist. They nodded sympathetically, wrote notes, prescribed pills. The pills made the breathing louder, the whispers clearer. "You're doing this wrong," they told me gently. "You're fighting." I stopped fighting. That was my mistake. The more I listened, the more the world softened at the edges. Walls felt less solid. Time stretched and folded. I could stand in one place and feel multiple rooms around me, layered like thin sheets of paper. One night, I felt the wall behind me even though I was standing in the middle of my living room. I didn't turn around. I knew better. The voice came from everywhere at once, calm and patient. "We're ready now." I felt hands on my shoulders. Not gripping. Guiding. My muscles relaxed against my will. The air grew heavy, pressing me forward. I understood what facing the wall meant. It wasn't punishment. It was surrender. Behind me, the thing unfolded, vast and careful, settling into the shape of me the way the house once had. Ahead of me, the wall warmed, pulsed, and then became soft. Names whispered through my head, hundreds of them, overlapping, welcoming. I pushed forward. Light exploded behind my eyes. I woke up on the floor, gasping, clawing at empty air. The apartment was silent.
Still.
Normal. For a moment, I thought it had been another dream. Then I noticed the wall in front of me. A new name had been carved into it.
Mine.
And beneath it, a date. Today's. There is no more running. No more pretending. I feel it everywhere now, In every quiet space, every reflective surface, every moment when the world pauses just a little too long. If you're reading this and you've ever felt a room watching you, ever woken up facing a wall without knowing how you got there, ever noticed your reflection hesitate before copying you, it's already started. Stay still. It remembers you.